The Legend of the Dog Rib. Which are the ones that you've heard? And I've got so many names here. I've got Skandar Akbar. These were the victims, apparently. Skandar Akbar, Billy White Wolf. Roddy Pipe said this happened to Toru Tanaka, and Hulk Hogan said it happened to Torquemada as well, where pets went mysteriously missing and then got served to them at a later date.
I was going back to those early '60s days. I was a young boy at Dean's Gym for the Billy White Wolf Beauregard session, where I was. They had next to Dean's there was a little local type bar downtown where I had to go. The Morocco go get the ice and ice down the beer. Don't eat. We got the we're making barbecue for White Wolf and Beauregard. Don't eat. No, I wouldn't eat anything anyway. But I was young. Those guys were all drinking. But yeah, I chilled the beer for that one. Those guys, they were, well, come on, eat. Fuji, come on. Eat. It was, just, yeah. Then he brings the heads of the dogs. His friend lived behind his house, had a big field. We're going up to the mountain up in Cocoa Head there, and all the wild dogs and stuff from the back, and he'd shoot them. And he was a hunter and stuff, and skin them, and then they'd teriyaki them, and the lunch is served. The other ones, I don't know about the pets. I wasn't there. Like I said, I heard Hillbilly Jim's story about somebody, about another guy in Tennessee. So, it happened once that I know of. So I wouldn't dispute it not happening again. No, I wouldn't be in awe.
So you're aware of the Billy White Wolf one. What had he done? Do you remember what this was in sort of a receipt in?
They were real tight to the vest. They didn't like to spend money. And lived in Waikiki, they would go to the happy hour at the hotel and eat, and, as opposed to dinner, and instead of living well. And Fuji was always about living well, all about living good, and and being in style and stuff, styling it. So yeah, he was. So if they're a little tight in the little tight in the pocket, that kind of wound Fuji up.
Did he cook regularly, or was it like, I'm cooking today, and then everyone knew?
Cook. He was a hell of a cook. You'd have to be there from the start of the meal. The start of the preparation. Well, he'd always do the story about the tuna fish sandwiches with the cat food, and all true. Who was it? Atlas used to steal his tuna fish sandwiches, and he substituted with cat food. I used to feed the midgets tuna sandwiches too. He would do.
I've got to ask this one because I think you might have mentioned it in your Hall of Fame speech. It was a snowstorm where Fuji was driving, and yeah, you've got to tell us the story.
Erie, Pennsylvania. We're down. They used to go 3 or 4 days to. We'd hub out of Pittsburgh, stay in Pittsburgh there. So Erie, Pennsylvania is 120, 150 miles. It's some north of Pittsburgh, and God, it's a miserable, cold place in Pittsburgh. From Pittsburgh, and you go a couple hundred miles north, and it's a straight shot, all freeway. And Fuji didn't like to drive, couldn't drive in the snow, hated the snow, So we're coming back, and it's freezing cold, too cold to be drinking beer. So we grab a bottle of cognac, and he 2 or 3 shots, and he's driving. I'm looking, going, talking. I'm looking at the speedometer, and it's pretty good. You're doing about 45, 59, which is good for him in the snow and stuff, because and it was horrible outside anyway. And he said, you're driving normal. I said, that's terrific. Oh yeah. Next thing I look over, you're about 65. Next thing you're spinning down the road, slamming on the brake. There's nobody around. We're on a major highway. You know, he's going 70, 80 miles an hour down the, you know, in a snowstorm. It was just, oh God. The Sheik was in the back, and his head would pop up, and he'd look, and it would pop back down. Oh God. Yeah, that was.
Would Iron Sheik dare say anything to Fuji, just unless like he
Nobody
incurs
said
wrath?
him driving like that. Yeah, he was behind the wheel, and he had the accelerator on his foot. We were pretty much at his mercy.
Right, I've got a list. I did a bit of research, and obviously there's a few compilation articles of like Mr. Fuji's greatest hits as ribs. So I'll throw a few words out there and see if any of them maybe jogs some memories of some of his classic ribs. And the first one is, of course, laxatives.
That one, I saw his son or son-in-law put on the thing that I don't know if it's true, if he's the one that horseflied Haystacks Calhoun or not, but that's a legendary story from Hawaii. Calhoun would talk, he'd talk up a state, hey neighbor, and he was kind of like he thought he was like a big tough guy instead of a big fat guy. And anyway, they didn't like him, so they gave him the lax. He was going to Japan. I guess this is pre 747, 67, 87, 90, so whatever it is now. It's back in the old days, didn't have the big planes. So these guys, they were going over. I don't know who it was. Fuji gets credit for, but they horseflied Haystacks. And, whatever he was on a shoot, 400 or 500 pounds, he couldn't fit in the bathroom. So he had the runs, and he's going, he had to go back. But evidently they had to hold a big blanket behind him, and he took a dump into a mailbag at the back of the plane. I guess you can hear it all over the place. Very humiliating experience. Luckily, I never had to go through something like that.
I hope it was empty.
I don't know if that was actually Fuji or Valentine or Buddy Rogers, but it was coming out of Hawaii anyway, because a lot of the flights to Tokyo stopped in Honolulu, and a lot of the wrestlers used to stop going and coming. That's how Ed Francis built up his territory so massively in those days. Guys coming back and forth from Australia and Japan.
The next one I've got to say, and you actually mentioned this when I last interviewed, who was Outback Jack's drinks. Now, I've actually heard Brian Blair, I think it was Brian Blair, or it was Brian Blair, who said that it was Dynamite who was slipping illicit substances into Outback's drink, but you said it was Mr. Fuji.
Well, I don't know if Dynamite came there later. I don't know if Dynamite, but I like I said in the story, documented in the story before, the Sheik and I, there was a chain Mexican restaurant, I forget what the name of it was, but it was a mile or two away from the Holiday Inn where we're staying, and so we're showered and changed and headed out, getting a taxi, and going through the lobby there, and they had the hotel bar downstairs, little tropical type setting in the thing, and he's doing, come. The brother over here, he like drink. He can really suck him up. He really suck him up really good. He's a guy and I back. Yeah, mate. He says, you American blokes, you fellas, you don't like to drink too much, do you? Oh boy, here it comes. So as Fuji's, you get the medicine, the brother, he having hard time sleep for the brother here. I don't think he actually slept them to him. I think he actually gave the H-bombs to Jack. I'm sure Dynamite and those guys just slip them to him all the time. They did they tortured poor Jack. But I think Fuji just gave him so the Sheik and I, we take off. We go and, have the Mexican meal, a couple beers, whatever. And we're coming back in the taxi to the hotel. And they're surrounded by blue lights and just beep, 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 all over the place. All flashing. What the hell went on? So we go in, a good idea, that Fuji struck again. So we walked in, and the cops were there. You guys are, obviously with the Sheik there, the bigger, good-sized guys. He says, oh, you guys wrestlers? He says, this other wrestler, he's come back down. He's walking around the hotel looking. He's in a trance, and I guess they got him drunk. Must have been 3 shots, halcyon, the whole 9 yards. And he says, yeah, and I say, here he comes, not a stitch of clothes, not just Nick as a jaybird, and walking down the thing, and he's get out of my way, and he's slurring, and you don't know who you're fooling with, and he's surrounded by cops, and then it's like, come on, brother, let's go. They're gonna let him go. Everything's, he's nobody's gonna rush to wrestle him to the ground anyway. He's completely nude. So I get him, come on, brother, let's go. What room is he in? So they give me a key, and I get it. I said, you can't lock him in the room. I said, well, let's hope, they get him going back to bed. Oh, God. And Blackjack Mulligan tells the story. He was checking out. He said, what happened last night? He said the Outback Jack was naked walking around the hotel here. He said he was only...
Maybe they have the AC on.
True story. I was there.
There's so many I've actually written just to like bring up names. I might have to skip through a few of them. So one of them was incorrect directions on cars, where he just make people drive around in circles and circles and circles just for his own amusement. One of them, and you brought this up also with the Hall of Fame speech, and I've got to ask you about this. You mentioned that you used to shave one eyebrow or half a mustache, but then you also add, and this is a quote, his barbery was not only limited to facial hair.
Oh, yeah. He'd pull your pants right down. Men, women, I don't know. I was never present for any of those. Never present for those events. I, viewed a few results, but he was.
Was it just half?
He was busy. Fuji. He had a lot. Yeah.
So we've got also gluing/nailing people's stuff to the ceiling, cancelling flights, padlocks on clothes and luggage. But this one's a really famous one, and I imagine you probably heard this secondhand when he took out the car engine from Bobby Eaton's car.
Yeah, that was in Tennessee, I suppose. I wasn't there, but he did to SD Jones. He took the M80s and got it under the hood and put them where the ignition goes. So when SD went to the boom, those big red firecrackers, all the smoke and stuff coming out of the hood, and what the hell? Fuji just M80'd his ignition.
Who got Mr. Fuji though? He was got a couple of times. I know that.
Sir Dudley Clements, was in Tennessee. He was a manager. Died soon after Fuji left there in a car accident. He was a manager, and I think he was an Englishman also. But he and Fuji were real jam up. They're really tight, and might have been one of his dogs that got eaten early. I'm not sure, but anyway, he helped Fuji pack. Fuji was leaving Tennessee, going to San Francisco to work for Roy Shires, where I was at. So he helped Fuji pack his U-Haul to drive. He drove, wrestlers drove across country, stuff in those days with their family. Fuji had the U-Haul all loaded and everything else. And just as they were closing it, Clements said, gives a big fish and throws it inside and puts it in a box or, somewhere, stashed it in the U-Haul and shut the U-Haul and locked the gate, locked the door. And, 3-4 days later in San Francisco, by the time it was ripe, by the time he got to Hayward there in California from Tennessee, I imagine it's probably during the summertime that he drove. If it was wintertime, it wouldn't have been, a big thing. But so I imagine it was during the summertime that he would open it up and smell like hell.
I read one apparently from Lonnie Main, Moondog Main. Do you remember that one by any chance, or do you ever hear that story?
With him and Lonnie Main,
Yeah.
they were good friends. They did a lot of Bobby Jaggers, Cowboy Bobby Jaggers. They used to torment him. That was in Hayward. They all lived around Hayward. That's when I was living down in Santa Cruz, and luckily I was away from all that happiness over there. But they used to take, and Bobby Jaggers is nothing. It's like me. He knew all the story, Luthez stories that he wasn't there, and he was a nice guy. He was a good guy, but he had all the stories, all the oh, this happened here, and this guy did that, and like he was there. So eventually he got on the Fuji's nerves, and basically anyway they'd take him. They all lived in Hayward together. I think it was Von Steigers, Lonnie, another Englishman, Johnny. He wrestled, but they go after the matches. They'd all get together and they get Jaggers just drunker than a skunk, and they turn him loose. At one time, I guess he had a Corvette, and they got him all whiskeyed out, and then turned him loose in his car, and they painted his windshield, all the glass in his car. They painted it all black. He took they did all kinds of stuff to that poor guy. And there was, they just here drink food. Come on. More have another. He loved it. He was a wonderful host. If he wanted to get you inebriated.
Was it a Johnny Barend? Was that the name?
No. Johnny Eagle.
Johnny Eagle.
Johnny Barend was a big star. He was the big star here in Hawaii for the longest time, and good guy. His wife's still around. Lives with Don Lewin's. Where Don Lewin's house was, the old Lewin brothers. In fact, I was watched Sansa Iwo Jima last night, and the old Don passed away, and we went to his. They had a service for him at Kaneohe Marine Base, and they had put his name on the stone. He was the oldest Marine on the island. He was the most senior, and he'd been to. He was at Iwo Jima, and he was there. He said the only way. He says you get if you disobey. I get this. You disobey an order in wartime. You don't pay. That's grounds for and you're leaving a battle. You're wounded. You disobey a commanding officer's order. That's grounds for immediate dismissal. From the army. But the guy ordered him, and he disobeyed it. But he was going back into battle, as opposed to running out of battle. So that was Don Lewin's. That was one of Don Lewin's. He was a Marine there on Iwo Jima. And he was wounded, going back to battle, and the lieutenant or captain said, "Get your ass up, out of here." He said, "No, I'm going back to the front." So he was. That's the only time, I guess, in a war situation or any situation where you can, especially war, a battle situation, that you can disregard the comment, of a higher up.
Yeah, and not get discharged, basically, dishonorably discharged.
Yeah, dishonorable discharge.
Yeah, I've got to ask this before we move off the ribs, because obviously it's just a huge subject with Fuji. Did he ever get you?
Oh yeah, sure. Back and forth. We went back and forth. Like Tanaka, a lot of his stuff on me would backfire. I left the truck with him one time when I left New York for a few months, and I had a pickup truck. Came back to Hawaii, and so he would spare Fuji would spare no expense. And I didn't like shiny things or paintings or decorations on my cars or anything. I like to keep them simple. So I came back, I got the truck, and it was covered. I had big lights on the top of it, and lights, and the thing was all lit. Was like a Christmas tree going down the road. But it followed. We were doing that TV in Allentown one time, and it was so much fog you couldn't see your hand in front of your face. So they had to follow me back because I was the guiding light through the fog. They had to follow